Chapter 48. They slowly walked back to camp. The tall man was the Texas Attorney General, the chief law enforcement officer of the state. Stanley's lawyer was named Miss Moragano. Stanley held the suitcase. He was so tired he couldn't think straight. He felt as if he was walking in a dream, not quite able to comprehend what was going on around him. They stopped in front of the camp office. Mr. Sir went inside to get Stanley's belongings. The Attorney General told Mr. Pendanski to get the boys something to eat and drink. The warden seemed as dazed as Stanley. "You can't even read," she said to Zero. Zero said nothing. Mrs. Moragano put a hand on Stanley's shoulder and told him to hang in there. He would be seeing his parents soon. She was shorter than Stanley, but somehow gave the appearance of being tall. Mr. Pendanski returned with two cartons of orange juice, two bagels. Stanley drank the juice but didn't feel like eating anything. "Wait," the warden said. "I didn't say they stole the suitcase. It's his suitcase, obviously, but he put things in there from my cabin inside. If that's what you said earlier. That's what you said earlier," said Mrs. Moragno. "What's in the suitcase?" the warden asked Stanley. "Tell us what's in it, then we'll open it and see." Stanley didn't know what to do. "Stanley, as your lawyer, I advise you not to open your suitcase," said Miss Moragno. "He has to open it," said the warden. "I have the right to check the personal property of any of the detainees. How do you know if there aren't drugs or weapons in there? He stole a car, too. I've got witnesses." She was just hysterical. "He is no longer under your jurisdiction," said Stanley's lawyer. "He has not been officially released," said the warden. "Open the suitcase, Stanley." "Do not open it," said Stanley's lawyer. Stanley said nothing. Mr. Sir returned to the office with Stanley's backpack and clothes. The Attorney General handed Miss Moragno a sheet of paper. "You're free to go," he said to Stanley. "I know you're anxious to get out of here, so you can just keep your orange suit as a souvenir, or burn it, whatever you want. Good luck, Stanley." He reached out his hand to shake, but Mr. Moragno hurried Stanley away. "Come on, Stanley," she said. We have a lot to talk about." Stanley stopped and turned to look at Zero. He couldn't just leave him there. Zero gave him thumbs up. "I can't leave Hector," Stanley said. "I suggest we go," said the lawyer in a sense of urgency in her voice. "I'll be okay, Zero," said Zero. His eyes shifted toward Mr. Pendanski on one side of him and the warden and Mr. Sir on the other. "There's nothing I can do for your friend," said Miss Moragno. "You are released pursuant an order of the judge." "They'll kill him," said Stanley. "Your friend is not in danger," said the Attorney General. There is going to be an investigation into everything that's happened here. For the present, I'm taking charge of the camp." "Come on," Stanley said to his lawyer. "Your parents are waiting." Stanley stayed where he was. His lawyer sighed. "May I have a look at Hector's file?" she asked. "Certainly," said the Attorney General. "Mrs. Walker, go get Hector's file." She looked at him blankly. "Well?" The warden turned to Mr. Pendanski. "Bring me Hector Zeroni's file." He stared at her. "Get it," she ordered. Mr. Pendanski went to the office. He returned a few minutes later and announced the file was apparently misplaced. The Attorney General was outraged. "What kind of camp are you running here, Mrs. Walker?" The warden said nothing. She stared at the suitcase. The Attorney General assured Stanley's lawyer that he would get the records. "Excuse me while I call my office." He turned back to the warden. "I assume your phone works." He walked into the camp office, slamming the door behind him. A little while later, reappeared and told the warden she wanted to talk to her. She cursed, then went inside. Stanley gave Zero a thumbs up. Caveman, is that you? He turned to see Armpit and Squid coming out of the rec room. Squid shouted back into the rec room. Caveman and Zero are out here. Soon all the boys from Group D had gathered around him and Zero. Good to see you, man, Armpit said, shaking his hand. We thought you were buzzard food. Stanley is being released today, said Mr. Pendanski. Way to go, said Magnet, hitting him on the shoulder. And you don't even have to step on a rattlesnake, said Squid. Even Zigzag shook Stanley's hand. Sorry about, It's cool, said Stanley. We had to lift the truck clear out of the hole, Zigzag told him. I told everybody in C, D, and E we just picked it right up. It was really cool, said Twitch. X-Ray was the only one who didn't come over. Stanley saw him hanging back behind the others a moment, then returned to the rec room. Guess what, said Magnet, glancing at Mr. Pendanski. Mom says we don't have to dig any more holes. That's great, Stanley said. Will you do me a favor, asked Squid. I guess, Stanley agreed, somewhat hesitantly. I want you to, he turned to Mr. Maragno. Hey, lady, you have a pen and paper I can borrow? She gave it to him. Squid wrote down a number which he gave to Stanley. Call my mom for me, okay? Tell her I said I was sorry. Tell her Alan said he was sorry. Stanley promised he would. Now he would be careful out in the real world. Now you be careful out in the real world, said Armpit. Not everyone is as nice as us. Stanley smiled. The boys departed, and the warden came out of the office. The Attorney General was right behind her. My office is having difficulty locating Hector Zeroni's files, the Attorney General said. So you have no claim of authority over him? Asked Mr. Maragno. I didn't say that. He's in the computer. We just can't access his records. It's like he's fallen through the hole in the cyberspace. The hole in cyberspace, Mr. Maragno repeated. How interesting. When is his release date? I don't know. How long has he been here? Like I said, we can't. So what are you planning to do with him? Keep him confined indefinitely without justification while you go crawling through black holes in cyberspace? The Attorney General stared at her. He was obviously incarcerated for a reason. Oh, and that reason was? The Attorney General said nothing. Stanley's lawyer took hold of Zero's hand. Come on, Hector, you're coming with us. Chapter 29. There never used to be yellow-spotted lizards in the town of Green Lake. They didn't come here until after the lake dried up, but the townspeople had heard about these red-eyed monsters living in the desert hills. One afternoon, Sam the Onion Man, and his donkey, Mary Lou, were returning on his boat, which was anchored just a little offshore. It was late in November, and the peach trees had lost more of their leaves. Sam, someone called. He turned around to see three men running after him, waving their hats. He waved. Afternoon, Walter, Bo, Jesse. He greeted them as they walked up to him, catching their breath. Glad we caught you, said Bo. We're going rattlesnake hunting in the morning. We want to get some of your lizard juice, said Walter. I ain't scared of no rattlesnake, said Jesse, but I don't want to come across one of those red-eyed monsters I seen once. And that was enough. I knew enough about red eyes, of course. I hadn't heard about the big black teeth. It's white tongue that got me, said Bo. Sam gave each man 2 bottles of pure onion juice. He told them to drink 1 bottle before going to bed that night, then half bottle in the morning, and then half bottle around lunchtime. You sure the stuff works? Asked Walter. I tell you what, said Sam, if it doesn't, you can come back next week and we'll give you money back. Walter looked around unsure, and Bo and Jesse laughed. Then Sam laughed too. Even Mary Lou let out a rare hee-haw. Just remember, Sam told the man before they left, it's very important you drink the bottle tonight. You got to get it in your bloodstream. The lizards don't like onion blood. Stanley and Zero sat in the back seat of Mr. Maragno's BMW. The suitcase lay between them. It was locked, and they decided to let Stanley's father try and open it from his workshop. You don't know what's in it, do you? She asked. No, said Stanley. I didn't think so. The air conditioning was on, but they drove the windows open as well. No offense, but you boys really smell bad. Miss Maragno explained that she was a patent attorney. I'm helping your father with new product he's inventing. He happened to mention your situation. I did a little investigation. Clyde Livingston's sneakers were stolen sometime before 3:15. I found a young man, Derek Dunn, who said that at 3:20 you were in the bathroom fishing your notebook out of the toilet. Two girls remembered seeing you come out of the boys' restroom carrying a wet notebook. Stanley felt his ears redden. Even after everything he'd been through, the memory still caused him to feel shame. So you couldn't have stolen them, said Miss Maragno. He didn't. I did, said Zero. You did what? Said Mr. Maragno. Miss Maragno. I stole the sneakers. The lawyer actually turned around while driving and looked at him. I didn't hear that, he said. And I advise you to make sure I don't hear it again. What did my father invent? Stanley asked. Did he find a way to recycle sneakers? No, he's still working on that, exclaimed Miss Maragno. But he invented a product that eliminates foot odor. Here, I've got a sample in my briefcase. I wish I had more. The two of you could bathe in it. She opened her briefcase and found one hand. She opened her briefcase with one hand and passed a small bottle back to Stanley. It had a fresh and somewhat spicy smell. He handed it to Zero. What's it called? Stanley said. Haven't come up with a name yet, said Miss Maragno. It smells familiar, said Zero. Peaches, right? Said Mr. Maragno. That's what everyone says. A short while later, the boys fell asleep. Behind them, the sky had turned black. The first time in over 100 years, a drop of rain fell into the empty lake.